Coach Baines, so great to see you. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
You and I had a short conversation about your year. I know you got a young group. What a great year you had. So much to be proud of. I know the ball didn't bounce exactly the way you wanted it at the end, but now that you've had a couple of days, how do you look back at this season and these young guys that really battled for you?
It was a great year. I'd say the biggest thing for me was saw a lot of improvement. And I think from a coach, that's always our love language is whenever you start a season and then you see what you look like in October and then what you look like in February, March.
Yeah.
And if it looks somewhat similar, then you really haven't done your job. And I thought maybe more than any team I've had, honestly, the way we looked 5 months later was remarkably different. We were playing at a really high level.
Didn't that feel good? I
It,
don't, I don't know if there's a better feeling when the kids have come that far. I coached in the SLIAC for a long time. We had some epic battles against Elmhurst. It was a great place to play. It's a great environment. The SLIAC, we knew we weren't going to get an at-large. We just knew it. We had to win the league, win the conference if we wanted a chance to go to the tournament. So I would always, our first 10 games, I would just abuse my kids. If we could get 5 Division Ones and 6 Division Twos to play us, we would do it. I just wanted them mentally tough going into the conference. CCIW is a completely different world. I think you guys have gotten 3 bids in the past, haven't you?
we've had a lot of years where we've had, yes.
What do you do in terms of your scheduling to prepare for that gauntlet, which is the CCIW? How do you look at it?
Yeah, it's changed over the years. First of all, the criteria and how they select the teams, it always is morphing and it's different. It's becoming a lot more mathematical than it is subjective. It's like putting a puzzle piece together. I'll be honest, you're just trying to get some good games that can help your strength of schedule, but you're also trying to get enough wins to get in, and
Right.
that's a fine balance, especially when you know our league. We had one point this year where going into conference, all 9 of our teams in our league were in the top 100 in the MPI, how they rank it,
Wow,
and
crazy.
our last place team, North Central, beat Illinois Wesleyan, who's in the tournament and won our league, and so I think top to bottom you know you're going to have a lot of close games, and so it it is getting harder because you never know. There's teams that you thought were going to be good, and you have them on your schedule, and then for some reason they go 7-18, and
Right. That
that
hurts.
really hurts you, and
Yeah.
you really don't have a lot of control over that. And I wish we had a little bit more with the conference schedule. I wish it was really more part of the factor of getting in than it is right now. They've eliminated that somewhat.
Yeah.
And I think that's been hard on us in our league because we know how hard it is to play in the league. And then that's the only given that you have every year is that, okay, we're going to play this schedule and there's going to be 16 tough games.
We're gonna spend a lot of time on recruiting the second half, so it's going to take everything I've got to hold myself back from asking recruiting questions for a little bit. But I want to talk about getting a team ready to play that CCIW schedule and that tough non-conference that you play every year. What is your mindset going into October? Because I remember my first game as a head college coach was against Hanover, and you know how freaking good they were back in our heyday when we started. I think we lost by 50 points. And I remember getting to the end of that season and going back and watching that film 3 or 4 times. And they weren't bigger than us. They really weren't that much more athletic than us. But man, they were in great shape. There were no loose balls that they didn't get. They dominated glass. They were just so much more physical than us. And that taught me so much as a coach about how I needed to prepare my team every year. So
Sure.
the CCIW is like that every single night. So
Yeah.
what is your mindset when you're going, okay, I've got my team. I know what my team looks like. How are we going to build out our fall practices to get us ready for that and to be able to retain that for 5 months.
It's funny you say that whenever you got there. When I came back to Elmhurst. I've been here now 13 years as the head coach. And
Crazy.
I come back and I was an assistant here for a while, and then I left to take over at St. Francis as a NAIA coach, and I came back. But they had fallen a little bit on harder times. I think they were 6-19 the year before I got here.
Yeah.
Our first year, we did a good job. We went 14-11, and we got the boat back on course. And then that second year, we actually made the NCAA tournament. We won over 20, and we got the script flipped. But that second year, I was laughing because we had a scrimmage with UW Whitewater, who's always a perennial power and physical and everything. And we got done with the scrimmage. I think we lost about 4 or 5, and the guys were like high-fiving. That's not too bad. And there was this idea that we weren't losing by 30 now, so that great job. And I had to I think I lit into them. I'm like, what, you guys? None of the teams that we play in the league are going to be any different than playing Whitewater. If we want to win the league, we're going to have to beat them. And I felt like there was a mindset that had to be changed as you go in and be like, we're not doing this just to be decent versus good teams. We're trying to be one of those. And so, yeah, so there's a mindset to that. Every coach is different. They all have their things. And you're talking about the recruiting piece of it. We're trying to get competitive, tough guys. And I think if you can see that in them, you know that you're always going to have some guys that are fighting. We always use the same around here. To be a champion, you can't just throw punches. You got to be able to take a punch. And I said, we don't have glass jaws in this program. And I think that's part of it. I think you build that into it. And over the course of years, I think now the guys know that. And so I think that's part of it. And when you're talking about October, you're like, okay, I got to make this stuff competitive. I got to make it hard. I'm not an in your face type of guy, but we got to make it hard, and they got to really compete in it. They got to earn it.
What does that look like in terms of drills? So this is the podcast where you can get into the weeds with me.
No, that's good. I like it. That's good.
If nobody listens to this but me and you, then I'm okay with it.
This is like the Hubie Brown one, right? You can actually say all the stuff. Okay.
That's right. This is the Hubie Brown podcast because I want to talk hoops with you. So I'm a junkie like you are. How do you create that toughness? The elimination of the glass jaw, because until you take a punch, you don't know what your jaw's made of. So you can't wait till you get to Illinois Wesleyan or Carthage to figure that out. So what does those first 2 or 3 weeks of practices look like in terms of drills to create that?
Yeah, I think there's the one thing that I felt like over the years now I've gotten better at with our assistants is telling them, okay, this is if we're gonna have 3 different types of stuff. We're gonna have the individual improvement, the skill work, the stuff that everybody does, but we've got to make sure that we're purposeful in what we're doing. And it's not. I think one of the things right now for young coaches is there's so much stuff on YouTube and everything. I think, Coach, that's a great drill. This is a great drill. And I'm like, guys, we can't just pick one little thing every day just to work. I said, this is an accumulation of a lot of days. And so we got to be purposeful in that. So there's your skill work. There's the stuff that we're trying to do a lot of teaching and trying to do the team stuff. And in those situations, I'll tell the coaches, okay, you can interject here. We can stop them. We can correct some things, or I'll say, hey, we're going to play for 5 minutes and we're going to huddle. And then that's when you can correct. And that's a lot of teaching. The third part of it is you're feeding them to the wolves. We'll do a drill we call work off 10, work off 8. You put 8 minutes on the clock, and if you're at 8, and if you get a stop, it goes down to 7. If you don't, it goes up to 9, and you got to work it down to 0.
Love that.
And in those, I tell the coaches, we're coaching, but I said that they got to figure this out on their own. That this is the time that you're in a game and things go wrong, and they have to all huddle up, and coaches are out the window. That's leadership on the floor. And you got to teach that. I think that's a skill. I really do. I think it's just like anything else in practice. And if we're doing work off 8 at the 4-minute mark, I'll say, hey, Dom, our captain, I'll say, you want to huddle your guys? And they're like, Coach, yeah, give me 30-second timeout. And I go, okay. And they huddle up and we stay out of that huddle. And I'll tell them, don't get in there. That's them. And I think so. You got the skill work and you got the stuff you're teaching, but you're also teaching them about the leadership part and hearing voices and concentration and all of it. And I think that you do have to teach that.
Have you found over the years, because I don't know if I was there when I was a younger coach, I think it took me some time, that you can develop coach on the floor? Or do,
Yeah.
do you have to recruit it? Are you finding that the kid that maybe wasn't quite vocal when they came in, a little shy, a little timid, that you can teach them how to be a coach on the floor?
I think you can. I really do. And I think one thing, as a young coach, I did this too, and I think I've developed, is we all have this idea of what a leader looks like on the floor. That's the slap the floor, I'm going to get in the huddle, I'm going to talk, and there's this vision.
Yeah.
And I think when we had an All-American, we had Jake Rhodey here, and he was a quiet guy, and he's a point guard. And I think the first 2 years he was here, I was always on him. You're the point guard, you got to talk, and it's just not his personality. And he's the best player. And so I had to say to myself, I got to do a better job of coaching him. I'm not doing a good job because I've got the best player on the floor is not connecting with our team the way I want him to. We started doing personality tests. And so in our leadership stuff. And so we actually that year had captains. We had 4 different personalities, and his was you have your competitive guys, you have your raw guys, you have your relationship guys, the hey, we can do this, man, and then you have your standards, goals, the analytic guys. And so he fell in that 4th spot. When we started doing that, we split up the leadership. And so if we were having a dead practice on a Saturday morning, I didn't go to him. I went to the captain of the rah-rahs, and I
Love
just
that.
said, you huddle the team. This isn't, we're not moving. And I think what happens in that is you're not asking somebody to be all 4 of those things as a leader. And that's what it is in real life. You have a job. The person in charge doesn't have to wear all the hats. They have to wear the hat that they do the best. And so I think when we started doing that, I think that helped, and it made me a little bit more conscious of what we really needed from our leaders. And I think, to go back to your question, yeah, I think that's something you can teach and develop, because you got to figure out the guy and what he does well, and then you got to really cultivate that. You got to, like a plant, you got to water it.
It's survival of the fittest. You playing college sports, you got to figure it out. You got to
You
fight.
do.
It's not me, but my team needs me. Let's talk about the other side of that. You talk about the raw guys and saying, gosh, we need that guy to step up today. That's his skill set. Can you be that raw leader if you're not a major contributor? If you're the 11th, 12th guy, can you get the attention of your team? Or are you putting them in that position to develop that?
Yeah, I think it's hard. I think at some point they have to get on the floor a little bit. We've all had the guy that's the great bench guy that doesn't play.
Yeah.
But I think guys have to be on the floor a little bit. At least the guys that are really going to make a difference, because they're the ones that are talking. But I don't know. Everybody, it's all different. I think that's the part that why do you coach?
Yeah.
One of those things that I really love is I love being around the guys and pulling that out of them. And I played for a really good high school coach and a really good college coach, and they really taught me about introspection of myself personally, and what my talents were. And I love doing that with our players, because they start to see themselves, and then you can hold them on it. You're like, listen, I've talked to you about this. You're the relationship guy on this team. You're the guy that always gets everybody back on track. And I can't have you folding right now. I need you to be that guy. And you put it on them, and then they start to feel like I am that guy. I'm that person. And I feel like that's part of how you build up players.
I take you, John, as somebody that was always introspective when you were younger. I don't see you as an extrovert when you were younger. Were you?
I was not. I'm a math major.
Ah, I see the
I was,
analytic brain always
I,
working.
yeah, I was. And it's so funny whenever I didn't know if I wanted to be an actuary or an accountant or what I wanted to do. And then my high school coach, I think my sophomore year of college, said, you should be a coach. And, and I said, okay. And honestly, I said to him, I would like to be a coach because I don't ever really want to go into sales. I'm not an extroverted person. And then I became a coach and I realized that the whole thing is sales. It's recruiting and getting your team right and boosters and everybody. I said I basically signed up for a sales job, but I love it. It's actually made me more extroverted, but I think I'm not the guy that if we're at a party, I'm going to be walking in the room and throwing the doors open. I kind of sneak in, but I like to listen and then I like to talk to people once we get comfy.
Yeah, nobody believes me when I tell them I'm an introvert. I got to work really hard to be an extrovert. I'm the guy that shows up to the party and I disappear 30 minutes later because I'm so uncomfortable. I can't do it anymore.
We meet each other in the middle.
That's right. Yeah. Let's not underscore this college coach that talked you into coaching. Let's talk about Denny a little bit, right? Because you for Denny Bridges.
Yeah.
And Denny became a mentor of mine because I really enjoyed our conversations. And he was really kind to me. And we played them in the national tournament at Illinois Wesleyan, I don't know, 2003 or 4 or something like that. And he was so nice to me after the game and sent me a letter. And then when he was stepping down, he contacted me and asked me if I'd be interested in applying. And it was just, I was a nothing coach. I was 28, 29 years old. But just the fact that he thought that much of me meant the world to me. So I have a great respect for Coach Bridges. What was that like playing for him? And what are some of those things that you took from him that you still use today?
He was great to play for. I think he was a hands off coach in terms of we had good players, but he didn't try to overcoach us. And I think that sometimes people misread that statement. Whenever you say you don't overcoach them, it makes it sound like you're not doing anything. And
Right.
sometimes I look at a Phil Jackson, and I think one of the best things he ever did was not overcoach too much. He let the talent come rise to the top, and he still organized it, and he made sure the personalities were right. I think he was really like that. He was a great offensive coach.
Was.
Really had a knack for it. We didn't guard anybody, but I figured if you could get to 85, you probably were winning anyway. But no, he was just, I think that's the part that I've taken from him. When he would always say to me, get off the bus with better players. And so I think that part was the recruiting part. And I've learned that in college. You can do the best job in the world, but if you don't have good players, you're losing. And you get good players and you get good people, and then you let them go, and then you cultivate them, you work with them. But I think that's the best thing that I think he ever did. He really kept us all together. We played really well together.
His teams were, and you were a part of some great teams there, some great teams, and always competitive, always going to put you on your heels from a defensive standpoint. When you, I don't want to bring, I know this season is so fresh, so I hate even doing this to
I'll
you,
go ahead.
but when you're thinking about your team in those tough situations, I know you were up 18 at half, and all of a sudden the other team's playing really well, and that lead goes away. What is your mindset going into those timeouts when the other team goes on a run or your team isn't playing at the level? That was the thing I still struggle with today. And if I'm going to become a better coach, that's the thing I got to get better at, is the emotion of that. What are you thinking about when you call that timeout, knowing you need it?
I think one thing that's really important to impress on as especially young coaches and are talking is you have to prep yourself for that situation ahead of time. You can't call the timeout and say, "Oh, we're losing it right now, and what do I do?" I do a lot of reading. You read the book, and we're talking about a teacher that a kid's always putting their head down on their desk, and they would hit them and get them to get their heads up, and then the next day they have their head on their desk and whatever. And so at some point the teacher has to think to themselves, what am I going to do when this kid puts his head down on his desk today, and how am I going to do this differently so I can get him to change it, or what am I going to do? And sometimes we don't do that, right? We just the next day, like something goes wrong at practice, and so I don't think about it until the next days of practice. Of course it's going to happen again because I haven't really thought about it. And so I think those timeouts, I felt like we went down to Wesleyan and we got an 18-point lead at half. I was still thinking they're going to make a run. What am I going to say to these guys when they're in there? And usually it works. It didn't work in this time, but we hung in there. We missed a shot at the buzzer to win. But I think you have to be very intentional with your thinking on that stuff and anticipate those things. The other part of that, and it's kind of part of that situation, is you meet with your coaches and you say, okay, we're going to make a change to the lineup. Okay. We got to talk about all the ripples that are going to come through all this. It's going to, who's on the bench, that guy, the guy you're replacing, the freshman that now is like looking, and there's another guy in front of me. And okay, let's anticipate all of this stuff. And how are we going to talk about it? How are we going to handle it? And you can't just do things and not expect there to be other things that come with it reciprocally. And I think that's part of everybody's like, what do you do in your office? You think about all that stuff, and then you start planning it in your head if you're doing what you're supposed to.
What's that sound like? When you're doing that proactive thinking about those situations, because it can't happen in the moment. It can't happen at halftime and go, okay, I got to be prepared for this. What's going on in your head for you to say, when I know I'm angry or I know I'm frustrated with these guys, my brain needs to be here. I need to get myself here. What's that look like for you?
Yeah, you all taught, we all have our strengths and our weaknesses. I think for me, I try to be patient, and I'm a pretty low key sideline coach. And so for me, it's like, I got to make sure that I'm holding it together because the other guys are going to have to do that. I think one of the things, one of my good friends in coaching is Kent Dernbach, and he's at Stevens Point. And when he was at lacrosse, I remember we played him, and he was just yelling at his team to stop talking to the official. Just play through it, get tougher, don't worry about it. And it really caught me. And I talked to him later about it. And I think it's the same thing for me. If I'm bitching at the officials, then the players are going to bitch at the officials. And then it's going to be the reason we're not rebounding isn't because we're not going and grabbing it. It's because we're getting pushed or all the stuff. And it's, I need to eliminate all the excuses for our players that they're going to be using. And if I'm using them, then they're going to use them. And so I'm going to say, I'll even yell at our assistants. I'll be like, stop talking to the officials, stop asking for the holds. Our guys will start playing through this stuff when we set the example that I'm not even worried about it. And that's not to say I don't talk to the officials, but I think that's what goes through my head is I've got to have control here. And if I can get control, then our players can get their control.
How much of that do you think about in practices as well? Because I love the fact that you do drills where it's 5 minutes. We don't talk to them. We let them do their own huddles and pull themselves together. Do you want your practices to be some of that holding and some, because it's such a fine line, because you don't want to teach your guys to foul because then it's going to bite you in the butt when it comes to game time. But you need that because when those officials are swallowing the whistle and they're letting guys play, you got to be able to overcome that. So how do you balance that? That was always a struggle for me.
It's a hard balance.
Yeah.
I think it's easier to back guys off than it is to rev them up. So I usually go the opposite. I go the direction we're going to get them fouling each other, and then we'll back them down. It's funny, and one thing we've done over the years now is John Krikorian this year and he's at Christopher Newport. He and I are buddies, and we send each other practice film early in the year.
Love that.
And we have the huddle cameras now. It's real easy to do that stuff. Just another different set of eyes that's not in it every day, that he gives you great ideas. And one of the things he said to me is, "You're calling a lot of fouls at practice that we would never call." And I rewatched our practice, and I'm like, our guys are really, we're calling way too much stuff because our guys aren't finishing at the rim, and we're calling it.
Yeah,
And it's early in the year, and everybody's missing layups and all this stuff, and it's just that kind of stuff. I think that he did that for me, and he gave him some things that I saw, and so yeah, that is a fine line, but I think it's really good to get other people to look at your stuff because they'll tell you.
that's awesome. You two are the best in the country. So the fact that you're sharing brains, scary. I love that. What makes you happy? What brings you joy coaching?
Oh, I love being around the players. I really do. It keeps me super young, 49 going on 50. So I'm not old, but there's just something about being around young college males that, like, I don't know, it just gets me like juiced
Uh,
up. And I also, the other part to me is the rewarding part, without sounding sappy, is you get invited to the weddings and you see these guys, and you're like, look at these 15 guys. You got some guy from the sticks of Indiana, and then you got a guy from the suburbs of Chicago, and you got a guy from out of state, and you're looking at it like, no, there's no other place where they would be friends and getting this together. And then I'd always, I'm with my wife, and we're like, hey, this is pretty cool that we started this thing when they're 18, and I'm doing a home visit with them and talking to parents, and now they're 30, and all these guys are still together, and we're sitting here watching this. That's incredibly rewarding to me.
I agree. It's the part I miss more than anything else. Is the heartstrings for me. That's the part I miss. You've had such a great run, and I'm sure a lot of that run you would point to the fact that you've built this great culture, and you've
Thank you.
you've built this continuous brotherhood over these last 13 years that make these guys proud to be a Blue Jay and be a part of your community. Culture is such an overused word,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of people that have different definitions of it. How do you define that Blue Jay culture? What does it look like for you? What do you want it to look like?
Yeah, that is, first of all, you're right. I think it's a very, I would say overused. It's a used term that a lot of people
Yeah,
use. And I very rarely ever talk about culture. I don't even really, I feel like if you have to talk about it, you don't have it.
that's right.
And I, every coach has their stuff. We have our Bluejay Way that's up in our coaches' offices, and it's in our locker room, and our players have it in their rooms. And I think the stuff that, I think for me, it's not what you say or you do, it's what you emphasize. And so for me, we're going to emphasize the selflessness piece, and staying together and being humble. And I think when I first got coaching, I'm not going to lie, I stole it from Brad Stevens. I'm sitting there looking at the Butler Way, and I'm like, I like all that stuff. And I
Yeah.
think that fits my personality and what I want to see in a team. And so I stole it, and I changed it to what I thought was important to me. And I think that's been part of that. I go back to it a lot. I really talk to our guys about it, and I think I tell them that's the foundation. And for me, it's like building that house. You're pouring the concrete, and you screw that up, and nothing else you do is going to work. And if you don't get that right, and so we'll spend a lot of time with that. One of the things that the NCAA did that I've loved, and I don't think a lot of coaches use it, which is crazy to me, but you get 90 minutes a week in the off season to do leadership training. And that's a pretty encompassing, you know, thing. And so we'll talk about just goals and habits and mental toughness and just the leadership piece, how to be a leader. I think all that stuff has been really important to us because whenever we step on the floor on October 15th, we've sorted a lot of that other stuff out. Like there's definitely a pecking order already, and I think we've got a lot of that in it. And Now I've been here for 13 years. I think the last part of that is, in every good team and every coach out there that's got a good program knows that there's residual leadership. It's the guys graduate and the next group of guys takes the reins. And if they're any good, they bring those other guys along and then it just continues to go. And that's part of, I think that's the one thing where people don't realize when coaches actually stay, they're not popping around all over the place and going to different places. That's, you really can get residual leadership when your players stay and your coaches stay, and you start to see that happen.
Ain't that the truth? Take us behind the curtain if you're comfortable. How do you break down that 90 minutes? What are you doing to kind of build those leadership ideas?
Sure. When we first started doing it, it was PowerPoints and just the nuts and bolts of stuff. It's funny now, speaking of like residual leadership, we have some of our captains actually teach. We're doing a lesson on body language. We have our captains, they've already gone through the body language talk a couple of times, so they lead it now. And I sit in the back and I kind of ask the guided questions and that sort of thing. And so it's just really, it's a lot of things. You talk about roles, and it's not basketball stuff. It's more how do people fit into roles and how do they accept them? And like I said, it's just a lot of odds and ends things, but I think that it's all really, it translates to the court, but it translates really more to the guys being able to run their lives. I mean, here's another one. Like, you get to the end of the year, and so you have your end of year meetings with all the players, and they come in and they talk, and they're with me for 45 minutes, an hour, and they'll say, "Coach, I'm going to come back. I'm going to be a better player. I'm juiced, right? I'm going to get it." And I say, "Okay, where are you working? Are you taking vacation? Are you going to hang out with your girlfriend? Let's go through the whole list of the things that are going to happen to you this summer." And young 18-year-old guy doesn't necessarily, he's, "I'm going to be back." And I'm like, "Okay, when are you lifting? Are you lifting before work? Are you lifting at lunch? Are you doing it at 5 o'clock when you're done? When you playing? When you getting your shots in? When are you going to take the vacation?" Because everybody needs time to get their bodies right. And so now, like, we actually, part of this is we're like, "Hey, you're gonna plan yourself. You're gonna send it to me. I'm not gonna sit here with you and plan your summer for you, but you're going to plan it, because if you don't, it gets away from you and you don't become the player you want to be." And so I think just that kind of stuff, but that's not necessarily let's make our team better. I think that's let's help this guy plan his life better, and then whenever he's a better person for that, then he's going to be a better player for us.
Yeah. There's talk and then there's a plan. And then
Yes.
there's execution. And if you've built out the plan, it's a lot easier to execute it than to execute the talk. Right?
Yeah. And like I said, everybody has we do the same thing as coaches, right?
Huh.
We're gonna change the offense. We're gonna do all this stuff, and then, okay, half the summer's gone. Did anybody watch any film? Okay, we got to plan this, or else we're not going to do it ourselves.
I love it, Coach, that you're teaching 18 to 22-year-old men executive function skills.
I appreciate it.
It's just not done enough. I kick myself. It took me 5-6 years as a head coach before I started teaching some of that. And I really didn't understand executive function and how important it was at that point. But the fact that you're saying you're using the Socratic method, you're teaching executive function skills, you're teaching them how to be adults, you're doing pre-counseling work with them. In reality, you're keeping them from having to go get a therapist at some point, because you're touching them.
I don't think of it that way, but I guess that is true.
But it is. You're doing work on the front end that any counselor would be doing with a kid that's struggling with anger, depression, frustration. You're doing that all on the front end. You're talking about body language. You're talking about how they represent themselves, how we communicate with each other. It's so fantastic. And it's just a part of, again, I don't want to use this word again, but I'm going to, because I can't think of a better one. It's your culture. This is how we're going to talk as young men, and we're going to talk as partners in this collaboration we're in.
Yeah, I can tell you that one time I was an assistant and we had a player that was captain for us, really smart, 31 ACT, smart guy. He was hunched over. It was I think I was like 23 at the time. And he's hunched over and on the sideline and after practice, and we had just put him in the starting lineup and he had a terrible practice. And I didn't, I was a young coach. I didn't recognize that as like, I got to go talk to him, whatever. And I said, hey, bad practice, Chris. And then he came back the next day and he was worse. And I was, I did a bad job. I was like, hey, we put you in the starting lineup and now you're taking this for granted. And I was on him. You got to play hard. You got this, all this stuff. And what ended up happening, his girlfriend had broken up with him, who he's now, by the way, it's his wife. But at that, they broke up and he was feeling bad. And so I think on the third day, I finally was smart enough to go over and be like, hey, let's talk. And it was crazy to me. Like in my mind, I'm a relationship person, but until that time, I was like, these aren't just pawns in some chess game. They're real people with real issues. And even if breaking up with your girlfriend when you're 19 doesn't seem like a big issue to me, it is to him.
Yeah.
And so that really got me on the path of, if I help our guys, I'm helping them to help them,
Yeah.
but it does make a better team. If you, your team is going to play better if you're invested in your players and they feel it.
Yeah.
And so when you're talking about giving them some counseling and helping them, they know you care about them and they know that you're trying to help them. And so then when I call you into my office and I tell you the truth about how you're playing, I'm not going to take that personally because I know you're on my side. And I think then you can really coach guys and you can coach your team. So I think it's all intertwined on how to put a good team together.
It's love, man. It's love. We care about these kids so much, and it takes time in our coaching careers to get past the need to get the wins. You've gone 5 times to the national tournament. There's coaches that do this for 20 years that never get there once. And I would imagine because you've had such a good career in such a good league and you've done this at 3 schools and had all these kids, I would imagine you've given yourself some grace to say, I'm going to coach the way I know they need to be coached.
Yeah, there is something to that. I think I think maybe it's our level. I think that's part of it. I
Yeah.
think there's times where I sit there think if I was a D1 coach, I might have been fired that year. Just because it's quick.
Oh yeah.
But we if we have a down year or an average year, you're like, okay, I'm going to evaluate how I'm coaching and our talent level and all this stuff, but I can still be me and I can still coach our guys the way I feel like we need to coach them without feeling the pressure of I'm going to lose my house type thing. And I think that's one of the nice things about the Division III level that I've been in it a long time. I played in it. You can enjoy your job without, we're still competing. It's still fun, but there's not the level of a life or death that I think a lot of coaches get into. And I think it hurts their coaching because
Yes.
they feel the pressure and they can't do it the way they really would like to do it.
My first 7, 8 years at Maryville, I think I had one assistant and I think they were paying him $1,500.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about, in a tangent to what we just talked about, how important your staff is to your soul and how you're able to walk into practices every day, how you're able to leave practice every day, the role that they play to keep you healthy as well as the boys.
Yeah. And it's changed what I've looked for in assistants over the years. And I've not often, but I have screwed up on a couple hires because I thought
Yeah.
I, I want this. I want this guy that's going to get us some recruits, whatever that is. My first thing now, you want hardworking guys. You want guys that are loyal, all that stuff. Yeah, all those things. But the thing that I'm really looking for is I want to enjoy my time with somebody. I can't imagine now putting staffs together where I'm like, I don't like being around you. I want to be in, if I'm traveling on a charter bus with somebody for a whole day, I want to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so I look for that. And then you got to fill in the gaps, and you got to be really intentional about yourself, about what are the things I don't do. Like, I'm a certified strength coach, and we have our weight program, and that's not my strength. I can do it, but
Yeah.
it's not who. And so I want to have somebody that really knows what they're doing. And we have Melissa Schwab on our staff. She does an awesome job with that stuff, and she owns it. And I think I kind of, like you talk about the players, giving them roles. You're like, hey, this is your role. I need you to fill this part of my staff because this is not my strength. And then on my side, I have to tell them this is what I feel like I do well. I'm going to carry the torch on that, and you guys are going to be my backups on that kind of stuff. I don't know. It's changed over the years, but I think it's funny. Whenever you run into somebody, you say that guy would be really good on my staff, and
Yes.
and you always put it in the back of your head, and you're like, you always have this short list of people that you're like, if and when I'm gonna call them,
Yeah.
and so I think that's part of it.
It's funny. I've coached one team in the last 12 years where I've been the head coach, and I've helped a lot of teams, but I've been so busy with other things. But every 5 or 6 months, it pops in my head. If I had to put a staff together tomorrow, who would it be? Who would I want to spend the next 12 months with coaching ball?
Do you know how I got our GA? His name's Shane Miller. He's awesome. He actually played at Illinois Wesleyan, and last year I was the NCAA tourney rep at University of Chicago. You get
Yeah.
hired, you go there, and you
Yeah.
help out. And I was in the restroom. Obviously, I know the Wesleyan players because we recruit a lot of them, and you know them and
Right.
whatever. And I was in the restroom, and Shane was in the restroom, and I just said, "Hey, Shane, what are you doing next year? You're graduating. What are you doing?" He's like, "Coach, I'd really love to get into college coaching. I'm looking for a GA spot." And I said, "Well, hey, when all this stuff's done, let's talk." Because I just always liked him. I thought he had a
Yeah.
ton of energy, and Ron Rose is a friend of mine. I called him, and so he's our GA right now. And it's just funny. I was like, I'm washing my hands in the restroom, and that's how I got a GA.
Yeah. I was in the gym the other day, and a kid that played for me here in town 10 years ago, he's a former college player, had a great college career. And I'm thinking about helping a high school team. And I go, if I go back and coach again, would you be interested? I just had that conversation the other day because he's just such a good kid. He's just dripping with role model when he's still in great shape and talks with conviction. So I love that. Coach, I could talk all day. I want to get into recruiting. I want to get into part 2 here in a little bit, but I want to do a little rapid fire with you.
Yeah.
I'm getting emotional with you talking about these kids and all this stuff that we love doing. But I'm going to give you some fun, quick ones just to get to know you a little bit better.
Sure.
Hardest place to win in the CCIW?
That's Illinois Wesleyan.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the crowd just, it gives them a boost. I think we saw that the other night. There's over 2,000 people. It's loud. It's the band's playing and everything. And I think it just is a hard place to play.
It is. Great facility. One word that defines Elmhurst basketball.
One word that defines us: resilient. I think we got a lot of tough. People think tough, they think the scrappy fighter guy. I think we've got a lot of mentally tough guys that they own that. They really realize that if you're going to be good, like I said, you got to take some punches, and you got to get up the next day, and you got to get at it. And remember that old Chris Berman on ESPN would always say, "No one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills."
That's right.
I always said, I feel like, without sounding unhumble, I think Elmhurst basketball players can circle the wagons. They're pretty resilient guys.
When you're in the Final Four next year, I'm going to call you and I'm going to remind you of that, where you were today after this season.
Really?
Yeah.
Because
that's your word.
I hope you're right.
That's your word for the summer for your
right.
boys, resilience.
Yeah.
You guys know how to circle the wagons. We're going to prove it this year. Is there a leadership habit you refuse to compromise on?
A leadership habit. Yeah, truth. Um, I that Jim Leland said, the old manager, the Pirates manager,
Yeah,
the Tigers, and he said, if you lie to them, they hate you forever, and if you tell them the truth, they hate you for 48 hours. And I,
you've
I,
had the truth.
it is. And I've changed. When I was a young head coach, I wanted to. I thought I did a good job, but I wanted to be liked. I'm not a confrontational person. I'm not in your face.
Yeah,
I just said, you guys would come into the office, hey, you're doing a great job and whatever. And I remember the player, Eric Leonard, came in my office. Good player for us, coming off the bench. Coach, what do I need to do to play more? And I said, Eric, you're doing fine. And he just said, why the BS? Why can't you just tell me what I need to do? And we had a good relationship and still do. And so that really changed me because I'm like, this is one of our smartest players. He works his butt off. And I can't tell him, hey, you're not shooting it well enough or you're whatever it is. And that really flipped the page for me. And it's really funny with young males. I always thought you just had to not be confrontational, and that was great. They like the truth.
they do.
They really feed off of it. If you just say you're not going to the glass hard enough and you're shooting 30% from three, and you got to change that. And if you have a good relationship with them, they take that the right way. They're like, thank you. I appreciate it. You want to watch film on it? Okay, we'll do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And the other one I heard one time, and we use this a little bit, is there's day traders and then there's investment guys. And I'm going to watch you at practice. I am not a day trader. You're not going to come up to me every day and say, how'd you do? How'd you do? How'd you do? How'd
That's
you do?
right.
I look at trends. I want quarterly reports. I'm going to watch you for 2 weeks. And then if I see major change over a 2 week period, then I need to start looking at you.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to do that on a day-to-day basis. You're going to have to put in your time and like I said, I can tell you the truth in those situations because I watched you, I'm watching the film, and we can have a real conversation.
I love that. Gosh, that's so good, coach. Just, it's not earth shattering, but it's such, the way you said it, the way you articulated it is so important for young coaches to understand that.
I appreciate it.
Because we can't evaluate it day in and day out basis because we're not giving ourselves the truth. The truth is, what are you doing? What's the significance of what you're doing over a long stretch? Now we can talk about your habits. Now we can talk about your routines. Man, we've seen you really bust your tail. You've been so much more physical for 2 weeks. It's not just the negative stuff, it's the positive stuff, right?
It's not just the players. We like to operate this way. So how
Yes.
would you like it if your AD sat at your door every day and evaluated your day every day? You'd
That's
hate that,
right.
right?
That's
You know,
right.
you'd say, my AD tells me what we need to do. And then after a month, he looks at our record and says, your guys are playing hard and you're doing a decent job. And okay, thanks for evaluating me.
That's right.
And that's what we're trying to do with the players. I don't need to be at the end of practice telling you everything about that practice every day. I
Yeah.
just need to be able to evaluate you over a course of a period of time. And I'll help you if you want some help. But I think that's how we all want to operate.
Yeah. I've had some great conversations with ADs the last couple of weeks. And it's the same kind of theme when talking to a coaching staff is, I'm your boss, but don't make me be your boss. Do your job, come in, let's collaborate, let's wherever I can help you. But if I have to be your boss, something's wrong.
Yep.
If I have
I
to
would agree with that.
discipline you because you're showing up late for practice or you're not working hard, what are we doing here? What's our purpose?
Right. Yeah. And you talk about the recruiting piece. If you pick the right people, I think a lot of that takes care of it. And like I said, if you can have good conversations and real conversations with them, I think you can get everything you want, honestly.
Last question. This is a doozy. You can take this however you want. What's separate? You've had an All-American. What separates an All-American from an all-conference player at the D3 level?
Yeah, we actually have 4 All-Americans here, but we've had a good run of them. I think, obviously there's the talent level, but the will to improve. How are you going to get a most people, it's like, okay, if you got a D3 All-American, they probably could play at a higher level, which is true.
Yep.
So how are they here and they're not at that other level? Probably they didn't get that scholarship because they weren't at this level yet. And then they worked. When it's that thing where the people talk about Steph Curry and they're like, I want to shoot like Steph Curry. Are you going to do what he was doing when he was 14 and doing all that stuff? Because you're seeing the finished product. You're not seeing all the stuff that went into it. And I think all of our guys have embraced that will to improve. And I think it's what's been really good in our program, and this happens a lot, all the good programs, I think, is there's Don Trellenberg right now he's our best player. He's a all league player. He was working out with those old guys that he was working out with an All-American for a couple of years, and he got to see the level that you have to put in to get to that. And so now he's doing it. And I love that we've got a young sophomore, Benny Beta. He just became an all-league player. He was working out with Dom all summer, you know, and those guys, I think they drag other guys in and then they become the player they want to be. And then it turns into the next player gets that.
And you're making my brain go back years, but I think this is a huge point that you've brought up is the kids, when you tell them, if you want to be Steph Curry, you got to put the work in. It's time and after time. But I think the real difference is, and I'm thinking of Benny Hebel, who was one of my all-conference players. There was a point his senior year where he wasn't working hard for me to see it. He was working hard because he wanted to be great.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's that kid that's wants you to come in the gym and notice that they're working hard.
Yeah.
Ben got to that point where he was like, I don't even want you in the gym. You're bothering me. I'm here to work. Get out of the gym. I don't need you. I don't even need you to know that I'm doing this. I'm going to be great. Is there some congruency there to what you've seen in your All-Americans?
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think you recruit that, don't you? You recruit gym rats, you know, especially at this level. But I think it's also that's part of the motivation, the part that the coaching part that you have to continue to do. And it's not like you're doing the comparison game with them, but I'm constantly saying, I bet you Mason Funk from Illinois Wesleyan's probably in the gym today. And if he's better than you today and he's working at his game, you're never going to be better than him.
That's right.
So you're going to have to be in there.
That's right.
And I think if you've got competitive people, they're going to soak that up. And that's those All-Americans, they do soak that up. The ones that don't soak it up, they usually don't make it because they don't have that drive and that inner, they're just kind of like, I just want to be here type of thing.
Absolutely. Coach, you're fantastic. Thank you so much for doing this. You are a role model for all of us, and just how you go about your business, how you care about your players, how you care about that life to death model. Their whole, it's not just those 4 years they get to be with you. You got a big fan of me, and that's why I'm wearing my Bluejay blue today.
Thanks, I noticed that.
We're going to be cheering for you, and we're excited for next year for you.
Thank you. I appreciate being on.